From the studios in San Diego, California, this is Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network, coming to you live here on this Thursday. I'm sorry, yeah, no, Thursday. The third day of November 2016, coming off the heels of probably the best Game 7 of all time and arguably one of the best games of baseball of all time. That you will ever see. You got the NFL starting this week, starting week 9 this week. College football going into week 10. Knicks and Nets last night. Islanders and Rangers this evening. We'll begin very quick. Just a note before we went on air. The New York Mets have picked up Jay Bruce's option, so Bruce will be a Met next year on a $13 million salary. Could possibly be used as trade bait, so this will definitely have an impact on the way the Mets outfield looks next year. But we're not talking about that right now. What we are talking about is the end of the 108-year drought. After a game that I put it on Facebook last night. I put it on Twitter last night as well. I was so happy that the Mets were not in that game or not in that series because I actually got a chance to enjoy it as a baseball fan and not stressing out to the point of having a heart attack. You want to talk about an entertaining game? A game that kept you on the edge of your seat, a game that kept changing and twisting and turning, and there is a bunch of things that we're going to go over. That, again, was probably the best game of baseball I have ever seen. Not from a managerial standpoint, not from a fundamental standpoint. I mean, there were 4 errors committed in the game, 3 by the Cubs, 1 by Cleveland. But from an emotional, dramatic standpoint, this was probably the best game I've ever seen. It doesn't get any bigger than this. It does not. And to think that this game scored what would probably be an average for the NFL during the playoffs, a 25 rating last night. And as I heard this morning, there have been Met and Yankee World Series games in the last 6 years that have scored 9 and 10. This was 25. Absolutely just unbelievable to see how this series and how this game just captivated everyone. And as I said yesterday, there were people that haven't watched a baseball game ever, haven't watched a game in years, that were watching last night. Last night was one of those moments where you have to call somebody and tell them to watch the game. It's just absolutely incredible. Everything that went on last night, from the Cubs getting out to the early lead, Fowler hitting the first ever leadoff home run in Game 7 history, to the Cubs then starting to walk away with it, to Madden's unbelievable pitching decisions, to the Cubs really starting to run away with it, and then the Indians bringing it back to the Rajai Davis home run, which is probably the biggest home run he is ever going to hit in his life, and he is not a home run hitter. To the rain delay, the 10th inning, to finally the end of the game. At no point in that game were there no dramatics. And again, you think really the first time any Cub fan would have had any form of doubt in that game was the fastball that Lester spiked that scored two. That, I would say, is the first time, from the first pitch of the game, that was the first time I had any form of doubt that the Cubs are going to lose, that the Cubs are going to win this game. Then you get the big home run by Rajai Davis to tie the game at 6. And I believe John Smoltz said it on the broadcast, which, by the way, wasn't he fantastic all series? Absolutely incredible. If it wasn't for the David Ross home run, they would not have been in that spot. Because without that David Ross home run, and if Davis still hits that home run, it's 6-5 Cleveland at the bottom of the 8th inning. That is a big home run. And that'll go down as his last actual recorded at bat. His last official at bat is a walk, but his last recorded at bat is a home run in Game 7 of the World Series. How's that to go out? But I'll tell you, you cannot get any more confusing last night than Madden's pitching decisions. It's unbelievable. He tried so hard to get Lester into that game. Whether he was trying to get Lester into that game or whether he was trying to get Ross into that game, he wanted a justification to get one of those guys in. And a 2-out walk when Hendricks is rolling was the justification that he needed. All right, we're leading. I understand we're leading. Don't want this to get out of hand. Lester, you're in. Really? And you saw Hendricks was not happy about that. You saw him walking off the field that Hendricks was not happy. And then Lester gives up a 2-out walk in the 8th inning and he gets pulled. Again, after he's rolling. Then you bring in Aroldis Chapman, who, for all intents and purposes, should have had absolutely nothing in the tank and really didn't. He gives up the base hit, which I believe put runner, what was it? I think it was second and third, or first and second. Oh no, that was the RBI double, pardon me. He gives up the RBI double to make it 6-4, then gives up the 2-run home run to Rajai Davis to tie the game, and then immediately after that gives up a single. I'm screaming, take him out. They just panned over. You have Arrieta in the bullpen already. It's not like you have to take time and walk him out there. He is already in the bullpen. Lackey was already in the bullpen. You could have gotten one of those guys up. You could have gotten one of those guys ready, but you didn't. And then of all the people, you bring in Carl Edwards Jr., a guy who nobody knew who he was when the team was announced, pitching in the 10th inning of Game 7 of the World Series up by 2. And then Rajai Davis does it again. This time with a single. Make it 8-7. But I was sitting there thinking as they trotted Chapman out there for the 9th inning after he had almost lost the World Series in the inning prior. As they go trotting him out there, I'm sitting there going, how bad is this going to be? If Cleveland wins in this 9th inning, if Cleveland wins, How sickening is it going to be for Cubs fans to know that in the 10th inning they had Schwarber, Bryant, and Rizzo due up, and they never got a chance to see what they could do? How sickening would that have been to Cubs fans, knowing that you had the three-headed monster up in the 10th and you couldn't get to them? That would have. I'm not a Cubs fan, but that would have made me sick. Then you get the rain delay, which, I mean, just come. Pardon, pardon that. Had another issue with the mic. To go into that 10th inning, you have the technology. Technology here has not been my friend recently. Anyway, you go into the 10th inning, you have that rain delay, which just heightens the drama. 10th inning starts immediately. Schwarber punches one through the shift. Then you have probably what is going to be one of the most overlooked plays of this World Series, and that is the tag up. Bryant almost ends the game right there with the home run, but Rajai Davis, who had an awful game in center field, made up for it with the bat, but in the field he was dreadful. All the way back to the track, he's a good stride off of the wall. Is it Almore, I believe it is? Knew that ball was going to get caught, goes back to first, and this is what you want out of a pinch runner. Is you want an absolute genius on the base paths. If you are going to bring in a pinch runner in that spot, which for Kyle Schwarber's speed you have to bring in a guy, to bring in a pinch runner like Almora, you have to, for him to think, okay, he's going to catch that one at the wall. I am going to tag up here and get to second base for Anthony Rizzo. If he does not get to second base, that put a lot of things in motion. Not only does that put a runner in scoring position, but that also puts into the heads of the Indians, okay, we have to walk Rizzo now. We have a base open. Base open, double play is out of the question now. We'll walk Anthony Rizzo because we don't want this guy beating us, and then you pitch to Ben Zobrist, who the rest is now history. For a young kid like Almora to tag up in that spot, that was genius, and it is going to be very, very overlooked. Everyone is going to look at the Rajai Davis home run to tie the game. Everyone is going to look at the Zobrist double. Everybody is going to look at the Miguel Montero pinch hit single, which is going to end up being the winning hit. But very few people are going to remember the Almora tag up from first to second on the Bryant hit to center field, and that is what made that 10th inning what it was. For all of the confusing decisions that Madden made, for the decisions that Francona made, and both of these managers were throwing pitchers out there that had nothing more to give, that gave everything that they could have given and could give nothing more than what they did. Kluber pitching for the second time on 3 days rest. He was done. Lester pitching on 2 days rest. He was done. Aroldis Chapman threw 62 pitches in 2 of the last 3 days combined before this game. He was done. He had no business playing in Game 6. So Game 6 actually kind of set up what happened last night also before it even happened. Miller was done. Allen was done. This was a series where all the pitchers that meant something to both teams had been used to the max, and they were trying to get more than they could get. You can complain about Kluber being left in to give up the home run to Baez, but then immediately after that, Ross hits the home run off of Miller. So, well, okay, Miller was just going to do the same thing that Ross did, so what am I complaining about now? Chapman was almost the most vilified person in Chicago. The weight of the world was lifted off of his shoulders when Zobrist hit that double. And you could see it in his face. Cubs batting in the ninth inning, you could see the way he looked. He knew he was going to be the scapegoat if they lost. He knew it. And it's kind of hard in that spot not to know it. But his entire complexion, his entire mood changed after Zobrist got that hit. Because he felt the weight of Chicago off of his shoulders. And to anyone who thinks he was going out there in the 10th inning is absolutely insane. He shouldn't have been out there for the ninth. He shouldn't have finished the eighth. What he did in the ninth inning was absolutely phenomenal. To go out there with nothing and know you have to get 3 outs and get those 3 outs was unbelievable. If you are a baseball fan, you are incredibly happy that your team was not involved in that game. Because stress upon stress, it would take you a good week or so before you actually appreciated how incredible that game was. For Cleveland fans, it might take them a little longer. And listen, there's nothing that the Indians should be upset about. Missing two of your best starters, missing a couple guys here and there. You guys beat Boston, who were heavily favored to beat you. You swept them out of it. You took 4 out of 5. You took 4 in 5 against Toronto, a team that again heavily favored to beat you. And you took the Chicago Cubs to Game 7 of the World Series when it looked like you were going to win in 5 games. The Indians just in the same way the Mets did last year, the Indians overachieved to the highest point this season and came up just one step short. A loss that, yeah, it stings, but and yes, it is very, very painful. But that is a loss you could sit there and go, well, what more could we have done? What more could we possibly have done? The pitchers gave you everything. The hitters gave it their all. Everyone performed to their limits. And we got beat not just by any team, not just by the Cubs, and forget about the 108-year drought. The Cubs were genuinely the best team in baseball this year. And you almost had a feeling it was going to happen. Because as I heard Joe and Evans say this morning, as I heard Mad Dog say earlier in the week, you cannot break a drought like this without something miraculous happening. 86 years ends, but not after the Red Sox have to come back from 3-0 down to beat the Yankees. The Mets get their first ever no-hitter, but not before Mike Baxter just about kills himself in a play that will be remembered forever. And the Cubs have to come back from 3-1 down against the Cleveland Indians. And the 108-year drought is finally over. Back after this.
Here's the 0-1. This is going to be a tough play. Bryant, the Cubs win the World Series. Bryant makes the play. It's over. And the Cubs have finally won it all. 8-7-10.
Joe Buck actually shows some excitement for once in a broadcast. Goodness gracious. Ben Zobrist named the MVP of the series. It 7 for 28, which gives him a 357 average. Had two doubles, including the biggest one he could have ever hit. And the triple, 2 RBIs, 3 walks, struck out 4 times. So those stats are apparently good enough to give Ben Zobrist the honors of World Series MVP, which, to be perfectly honest, I think should have went to Chris Bryant. I understand Chris Bryant may not have had the batting average that Zobrist had, and I understand he had the big error. Was it in Game 4, I believe it was? That really started off a whole downward trend. Really started a whole downward spiral for the Cubs that night. But Zobrist, while he did have the hit that clinched, well, that gave them the lead in extra innings, nobody had a bigger hit, I think, in that series than Chris Bryant had with the Game 5 home run. He had the Game 5 home run. He had a big home run last night to get them going on Game 6 to get them going. He didn't do much in Game 7, which is probably why he didn't win the MVP award. But to be honest, it should have been, my feeling, it should have been Chris Bryant. And if he would have gotten that, just think, he's played ball in the last 4 years for Chris Bryant. NCAA MVP, minor league MVP, major league MVP, and could have, it adds world champion to that resume over the last 4 years, but also could have added World Series MVP to that as well. I mean, just to show, I mean, this kid Bryant, not only does it show how good he really is, but it just shows the guy's a born winner. It really does. I mean, the guy's a winner. And to be on it, and to be on this team, just cannot feel any better than it does. The city of Chicago will celebrate the Cubs with a parade on Friday morning. The parade is scheduled to begin at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. Given the excitement surrounding the Cubs winning their first World Series in 1908 and Chicago's history of celebrating its champions, turnout for the parade will almost certainly be massive, go figure. When the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, 2015, the city estimated that there were 2 million people in attendance, and that was the Blackhawks' third Stanley Cup in 5 years. So that's from MLB.com. So you have to assume half the city is going to be there. Half the city, people flying in for this, you have to assume it's going to be upwards of 4 or 5 million people. But with this, and everyone's calling Theo Epstein the streak breaker. I mean, it really is. The guy has broken 194 years worth of droughts. I mean, he has broken the first and second longest World Series droughts in baseball. He broke the second one first, and then he broke the Cubs. If you need a front office executive of the decade, this is the guy. I mean, my goodness. Forget about the decade, of the century. It's got to be him. It really, who else can you pick? Who else can you pick other than I mean, you can't pick anyone else. So the Cubs World Series parade will be on Friday. It will be broadcast on the MLB network. So for those of you who want to not be a part of that 5 million person crowd that's going to be flooding the streets of Chicago all day long, I'm sure, can watch it from the comfort of their own home on the MLB network, which 9 people out of 10 would probably say that's a smarter move. But I mean, it is going to take a long time. And I said, doesn't matter who wins this series, Major League Baseball wins no matter what happens in this series. Whether it's the Cubs, whether it's the Indians, they win. And my God, with that game 7 like that, boy, did they ever win. Boy, did they ever win. They're going to be pumping their chest on that 25 rating forever. I heard somebody say it. I think it may have been Dan Lebitard for ESPN. I'm not sure. There are very few people on ESPN that I actually enjoy listening to. Lebitard, for some reason, is one of them. I think he said it. This now, because of this, and I put it on social media last night. This kind of takes away. The Cubs are known for this streak that just ended. It's what made the team so special. It's what made the team unique. It's what made everybody rally behind this team, whether you liked them or not. Everybody this year jumped on the Cub fan base, not just because they wanted to see them win, but because they wanted to see history be made. And for them to finally break the drought, to finally end the drought. They've succeeded in that. Which means now the one thing that has made the Cubs so special, that World Series drought, the one thing that has made them unique, the one thing that has made them the feel-good story, is gone. And now they really are they're just another team. As my friend pointed out, they're world champions. You're right, they are world champions. But say they don't win it next year. They're not that lovable bunch of losers anymore. They're not that special team that has this gray cloud above them. They're not the ultimate underdog anymore. They are just another team. They're just another team. Which is kind of upsetting. Because you've gone so long having pity for this team, and now all of that pity is gone. All of that pity is gone. It's absolutely incredible how much it's the joys of winning combined with, well, now they're not special anymore. They're another team now. Which is upsetting. Now the Indians are that team. Because they now hold the longest active drought at 69 years now. Really quick, before we get to the NFL and before we get to the underdog picks, which I have which I'm going to have to look through my videos here to find out what my record is. I think I'm still like 1 or 2 under. To the NBA really quick. The New York Knicks last night, again, look as though they're in mid-season form. Losing to the Houston Rockets. The Brooklyn Nets, however, Say the Brooklyn, just keep them playing in Brooklyn. That team cannot win on the road, but they can. They sure as heck can't lose. I know it's only 5 games into the year, but they can't lose at home, man. So the Nets do what the Knicks failed to do the night before, and that is beat the Pistons. And then the Knicks get blown out again by the Rockets. So there you go. I was gonna say if I would have been on the night after the first game of the year, I just said the Knicks are in mid-season form already by losing by 30 to the Cavaliers. And now a loss by 19 to the Houston Rockets at home. They're in mid-season form. They're in mid-season form already, and I understand that they have a bunch of new players. Apparently, the rumor is now that Phil Jackson actually picked up a clipboard the other day and started to teach the triangle offense after the second game of the year. Really? Hornacek's been the coach for 2 games. He's 1-1. Now all of a sudden you're going to pick up a clipboard? And what happened after that? They're 0-2. So you're going to stop now? Please? Please, stop now. You finally get a coach that actually somewhat knows what they're doing, and you're going to take it away from them. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really and truly is. The Islanders play the Philadelphia Flyers tonight in Brooklyn. The New York Rangers hosting the Edmonton Oilers, who at this point are 7-2-0 if you haven't been paying attention. So another lovable gang of losers looks to be on an upswing. The Islanders will play them on the 5th, so Saturday, in Brooklyn. The Islanders are after this game against the Flyers, they are on a West Coast homestand, as they will welcome in Edmonton, Vancouver, and I want to say Winnipeg. I think that's wrong, but I want to say Winnipeg. So there you go. So that's the NHL right now. To the NFL. Games this week. Atlanta Falcons versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this evening. Finally, you get a midweek primetime game that doesn't want to make you tear your hair out. And this is why. This is, again, I may have said it last week. I may have said it earlier this week. I may have said it on Tuesday last week. You wonder why ratings are down in the NFL this year. I'm sure part of it has to do with the World Series. I'm sure part of it has to do with the presidential debate, which mercifully comes to an end in the next 5 days. Mercifully comes to an end. But part of it has to do with putting two garbage teams. Who in their right minds, I don't care that the game turned out to actually be pretty decent and pretty competitive, who in their right minds is sitting there watching the Tennessee Titans play the Jacksonville Jaguars last Thursday night? If you want a solid prime-time game, put the Giants and the Eagles on Thursday night. That is a divisional rival. You have a young, compelling quarterback in the Philadelphia Eagles. You have the Giants, who really haven't had their offense go yet this year. At least you have something there. You at least have something. Put the Cowboys and the Browns there. You have Dak Prescott. We'll see how he can rebound after his worst week in the NFL against the Browns, who are just the worst. At least there's something compelling there. No. Falcons Buccaneers this week. I understand the Falcons are decent, and I understand the Buccaneers aren't necessarily the garbage. There's no storyline there. I understand the divisional rivals, but so? Could you put two smaller market teams out there? Please. Try. I'll even sit back and let you try. The Lions playing the Vikings on Sunday. Eagles, Giants, Jets, Dolphins in Miami. The Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Browns hosting the Cowboys. Pittsburgh, they're expecting Ben Roethlisberger to play against Baltimore in Baltimore. So if they do, that should be a rather easy one. Saints playing the Niners in San Francisco, or Santa Clara rather. The Carolina Panthers, coming off of just their second win of the year, go to LA to play the Rams. Colts, Packers, Titans, Chargers in San Diego. Broncos, Raiders in a battle for first place in the AFC West. And then on Monday night, you have the Bills. You have the Bills taking on the Seahawks. Teams on bye this week. You have the Pats, the Bengals, the Texans, the Redskins, the Bears, and the Cardinals. Underdog picks really quick before we go. I'm actually going to take the Eagles over the Giants. The Giants, for some reason, are favored by 2.5 in this game. I really don't understand that. They have the worst rushing offense in probably the history of the world. The Eagles coming off of that tough loss in overtime. I mean, the Giants, they haven't had their offense clicking at all this year. I understand they have to start at some point, but against the Eagles, who they've had no success at home against, I don't think so. I know better now than to fall for the 7-point spreads, because I've failed on all of those thus far. I just said I learned my lesson, and I'm going to take a 7-point spread. Colts are underdogs by 7.5 against the Packers. And I am basing that pick solely off of the fact that Aaron Rodgers has not been Aaron Rodgers this year. I just said I wasn't going to fall for a 7-point. I wasn't going to fall for a 7-point spread, and the next words out of my mouth, 7-point spread. And you know what? I actually think I'm going to do it twice. I think I'm going to do it twice. Do I take Tennessee underdogs against San Diego by 5, or do I take Buffalo underdogs Seattle by 7? That's really the question. So I have the Eagles. Covering 2.5 against the Giants. I actually think they're going to win that game. Indianapolis covering against Green Bay 7.5, and then it's Tennessee, San Diego. San Diego favored by 5, and Buffalo, Seattle. Seattle favored by 7. Oh man. Oh, never mind. I just saw that. Baltimore is actually favored against Pittsburgh by 3. So that's easy. So Philadelphia covering against the Giants, that's 2.5. Pittsburgh covering and beating Baltimore by 3. And then Indianapolis covering against Green Bay 7.5. Well, that turned out to be easy. So the odds makers obviously not expecting Ben Roethlisberger to play, which the guy has practiced all week. So you would say he's expected to play he's on the injury list. He's limited in practice, on the injury list. Doesn't say he's out. Well, then again, nothing's been put out about that yet, but limited participation in practice, that means Baltimore does not have a good pass rush, and Pittsburgh's offensive line is actually pretty good, and they're not banged up. Put him out there. That's my assumption. And you know Roethlisberger's going to want to play. If he is practicing at all, he is going to want to play. That and this is a big game against Baltimore. Baltimore and Cincinnati are only a game behind Pittsburgh. While Cincinnati is a half a game with the tie. But Baltimore can tie Pittsburgh atop the AFC North if they win this game. Pittsburgh's 4-3, Cincinnati's 3-4-1, and Baltimore's 3-4. So that's going to be a very, very interesting game. If Roethlisberger plays, it's going to be a blowover. The San Diego Tennessee game, you almost want to pick Tennessee in that spot because of the way the Chargers have played in the fourth quarter this year. That, and they really cannot afford a bad game this weekend. If they get a bad game this weekend, 2 days before the vote on Proposition C, which is the new stadium, you're going to vote no. I mean, you should vote no anyway, and I'll explain, because I'm planning on doing a little extra thing after my show on Monday on the elections and on Proposition C for the Chargers. But I mean, you almost want to pick the Titans in that spot. The Broncos and Raiders are a toss-up. I'd give the Raiders the slight advantage in that game because they are playing in the black hole. That and the Raiders are in a position every single week where it comes down to late game heroics, so they are battle tested for something like that. Seattle has played a couple of games this year, once against LA and then against Arizona, so 2 divisional games where you sit back and go, what is this team doing? And they should have lost that game against Atlanta on the Sherman pass interference that wasn't called. Saints and Niners, that game should be a rollover. Cowboys, Browns, that game should be a rollover. Chiefs, Jags should be a rollover. For the Giants, it's going to be about keeping the offense, getting the offense going, and keeping the defense somewhat controlled. I mean, the Giants have not had a stellar game on either end of the ball this year. You could say they've had good games on one end and maybe not the other, or they've been okay on one end and not the other. They got to have a great game from one of their sides. They're going to need the defense to either stand up and be good, or they're going to need the offense to finally turn it on if they want to beat the Eagles. The Jets, I think right now you cannot say the Jets are going to win this game for the sheer fact of this team is in such disarray to the point where people are tweeting during the game to take Fitzpatrick out, and they had every right to against the Browns. Jet fans don't want to see Fitzpatrick anymore. The Jets do not want to see Fitzpatrick anymore, but again, just like Madden with Hendricks last night, they do not have a justification to take him out. Ever since he got benched for that quarter, essentially, the Jets have won. The Jets are 2-0 with him back in the lineup. So they have no justification to take him out and keep him out. I don't see the Jets winning this game. And after the Dolphins, I want to say they play New England. No, they play the Rams. They play the Rams at home. That would probably be a game for. That would probably be a game for um, Petty. If Miami loses, if Miami beats the Jets this weekend, don't be surprised if you see Bryce Petty in against the Rams. Or if they lose these next two, they come back and in week 12. Week 12 they play the Pats at home on primetime Sunday night. Three of these next 5 games for the Jets actually is going to be primetime. Sorry, 3 of the next 6. Week 9 is Miami. Week 10 is LA. Those 2 games are CBS and Fox, respectively. Week 11 is the bye. They come back from the bye to play the Pats on Sunday night, the Colts on Monday night. They have the late game against San Francisco, week 14, and then week 15 is Thursday night against the Dolphins at home. So all of those primetime games for the Jets are going to be home. So, well, that's good. You get a chance to embarrass yourself on your home field on national television. So there you go. You got that. The Jets only have 3 more road games this year. This week, week 14 in San Francisco, and then week 16 in New England. All the other games, the other 5 are at home. So if you want any form of consolation, you got a lot of home games coming up in this second half of the season. So that'll do it for me today. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for wading through the technical difficulties we had during the Open. I will see you guys on Monday. Thank you very, very much for listening. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the hockey, basketball, football. Enjoy the World Series parade tomorrow on the MLB Network. Once again, the Chicago Cubs are World Series champions, and no